Hey swimmers, welcome back to the Swim Vice channel. This pro series is dedicated to Ryan Murphy's 100-meter backstroke in a couple of events, highlighting some technique points involving his streamlining position, specifically on his arm depth of the entering arm and how it affects his body line and also prepares him to be able to form and execute the backstroke catch. So in this most recent event, I will be freeze framing at a point here so you can see his arm depth initially. So he is considered lane 2, which is the right of the yellow line. And you can see here that his left arm, if you look at his shoulder line compared to his hand, is that it slopes down. It's much deeper, and you can see because of that, his body line is staying high on the surface of the water. By having his arm depth slightly lower, it not only helps his body line remain higher, but it will also prepare him to be able to execute a proper catch, so he's not actually catching mostly air. Also, because his body line is higher, naturally he wants to have a more compact flutter kick from his hips. So just here you see in full speed how compact his kick is and how still his head position is as well. By keeping his head position nice and still and his body line high, because of the arm depth, helps him swim through a very small space. Again, you can see here with his arm, you see that it is deeper. His hand is slightly below his shoulder line. When you do this, especially if you practice backstroke, you'll immediately feel much more extension throughout your body line, and overall, you will feel much higher on the surface. Even something as simple as the arm placement will encourage you to activate your posterior chain, your glutes, your lats, to keep your body line up on the surface and streamlined. So overall, the goal is to swim through a very small space because it keeps you within your draft zone, and anything more than that is only increasing unnecessary drag. Another point is, at this elite level, it's how fast they're swimming, both tempo and speed, that every little thing matters because of the speed in which they're moving through the water. So something as the arm depth can dramatically affect your backstroke technique. So again, with the arm depth, you can see how consistent it is. You could also see the space between his traps and his shoulder is that he's not cramped there, he's not crossing over. He's actually, not only is the arm depth deeper, but it's also wide. So if his head position's a 12, he's landing his right arm at a 5 o'clock, which gives him enough positioning to be able to form a full backstroke catch. And lastly, not only is his arm depth in the right place, but since it encourages him to actually activate his glutes, he's pushing his energy up, which overall keeps his body line fully extended, meaning zero flexion in his hips, zero flexion in his core, keeping that nice and long and extended. All these factors helped contribute to him winning this event.
If you're new to the channel or you've been watching my content, be sure to hit the red subscribe button below. That way you stay notified for new content weekly, and you also show your support for the channel.
Here's from another separate event. You can see that he's leading the way in this closest lane towards the camera at full speed. And you can see how still his head position is. He doesn't move it at all. Now right here you can see again, look at that arm depth. Actually, this is a better view. So going back to what I said earlier in this video, if his head position's a 12, he is landing his arm at a 5. And you can see not only is he landing at a 5, but his hand is slightly deeper than his shoulder line. Body line is also fully extended because of that. And as I've mentioned before, which is extremely important, if you look at his lats, there's a space between his shoulder and his neck. I point this out because when the traps are overactive, the tendency of, in this case, his right arm would be landing much more narrow, if not crossing over, and it would not allow him to actually get the correct depth nor being able to be properly streamlined. So something like that can dramatically affect your backstroke technique just by having tight traps in neck area. Here, clearly he's provided that space because his head is in the right place and also his arm is much deeper, ultimately providing him with a better catch, but overall having a better streamlined body position. And also because of that arm depth, if you look at his opposite arm, his left, is that it fully releases before exiting the water. What I mean is his palms or his palm of his hand flicks down because it's due to the rotation and allowing him to be able to fully release the left arm and be able to increase his range of motion of his shoulder. If he was restricted, he would be unable to do this. Therefore, what would happen is that his body line would collapse, kind of sitting down, hips would sink, and overall, due to that collapsing body line, would increase resistance and be much more restrictive. But in his case, he's lengthening his body all the time, really minimal flexion. The only time he has flexion is really for the catch, and everything else is trying to stay as tall, swim as long as possible. And as he moves past the camera, just to show you what that full catch looks like, which is formed from the form and hand equally. You can see right here, his body line is totally extended. There's no flexion in his hips, yet he has a full grab or catch of the water that involves his form and his hand equally, but where it's engaged is from his back, because that's ultimately where all of his strength and power is from. It's not independent from his shoulders. So a common misconception with freestyle and backstroke is that the further you reach forward, the faster you will swim. However, even though your intentions are to extend further out, what can happen is you end up swimming a bit uphill, slightly collapsing your body line, which actually does the opposite of what you want to do, which is increase more drag. So just by simply changing the depth of your arm can make a big difference, not only for your streamlining, but also to be able to create a proper catch. Now, if you're watching this and you want to learn how to execute backstroke properly or refine your skills, join the SwimVice program. By hitting the pinned comments below, you can access my backstroke course or go to swimvice.com for more resources to help with your swim practice. All right, swimmers, enjoy your training and I will see you all next week.